We are live on Yonkers Voice. Are we live? Well, guys, we are live. But before we start, okay, I have to say, congratulations, Commissioner. Commissioner is a shy man, almost like me. I'm shy too. Okay. He became 21 years old yesterday. Is that right, Commissioner?
Something like that.
Commissioner, happy birthday.
Thank you.
We wish you good health. We wish you stick around and you are around for many, many more years to come.
Thank you.
But always full of health, happiness, and love.
Thank you.
Now, Commissioner, we are making history in Yonkers. And the reason why we're making history is because you are, and I always say that, the first commissioner that are accessible to the people of Yonkers. Okay? People that we can connect with you, we can ask you the questions, you might have the answers or might not have the answers. If you do, you give it to us. If you don't, you look for it and then let us know. And for that, I say thank you, because people need to be able to talk to the man who is in charge of our safety in the city of Yonkers.
We feel like, and we know these are great forums because we know how important transparency is and sharing with the public. You know, not just what we do, but why we do it. And I think the why is extremely important. I think traditionally in law enforcement culture, you know, we haven't done a very good job of explaining the reasons for which we do certain things. And I think when people see, you know, or we're willing to take them in and share with them, you know, the reasons for it and the methodology behind it, I think we just all get in a better place of having a better understanding of why certain things are done.
You know, Commissioner, when you talk about transparency, and you and I have spoken about it many times, we need to do a little bit more than just talk about it. Because sometimes perception becomes reality. Okay? So you are all in favor of transparency. Show what we do for the community. Okay? Let us see, let them see, so they can make a real judgment about our performance, about what we do in the city. Yeah.
Or they might even have additional questions that we can answer.
Exactly. But in order to do that, your officers need to understand that transparency is important. Because when you have officers, and I'm so sure that they're doing that probably to protect the victim of the families. I understand that perfectly okay. But it's also important to give the projection that we have nothing to hide, that we work according to the guidelines and policies of the police department. I think that is extremely important. How do you feel about that, sir?
I think it's very important. I think you're going to see it more and more with the advent of body cams. And so we now have our entire patrol force and our patrol supervisors and some other units fully outfitted. Each one has their own body camera. By and large, it was a very, very quick turnaround. The mayor, Mayor Spano, made a commitment to getting this done very rapidly. I mean, a lot goes into purchasing and RFPs and you know, getting different quotes from different companies. There's a lot of infrastructure with body cams. I only know this now is because we went through it, but there's a lot that goes into it, and he was able to make this work very, very quickly with our staff and our officers. PBA and the CLSA negotiated with us about using the body cams, getting a policy that we could all live with pretty quickly. And I have to say, fast forward to today, I hear really good feedback about the officers having it, and in some cases people said, I don't know how I left the precinct without a body cam, because although it doesn't tell the entire story, there's so many benefits to it. We can clarify a complaint, you can substantiate it or unsubstantiate it. We can identify training needs. You know, maybe there was something that was not done unlawfully or illegally, but it could have been done better. And now we have video to look at.
And sir, sorry to interrupt, and you are very much for improvement. You know, I think from the conversations that we got, that you feel that you can always improve.
Always, always, yes. You have to. I mean, and I'm sure that goes for any organization. I'm sure it goes for Yonkers Voice.
I improved.
You're probably always thinking about improving. What can you do better? You know, what kind of feedback do you get from your viewership? And you make changes, and it's the same thing with us.
But Commissioner, one thing is showing a feed from a body cam that only comes to play when there is a dispute or clarification or training. And another thing is showing what's going on from beginning to the end by media. Okay, that's where the people are watching it live, real, as it's happening. And I think it's very important to tell or to train your officers. Let the media see what we're doing.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, there are obviously certain things we need to do with respect to body cams as far as releasing the stuff, but we do. Like, for example, I think you recall last June we had that great job where two of our officers in the 4th Precinct, Officer Paul Samayedny and Officer Roscoe Frusco, lifted up the car off the baby, and mom and baby had been run over by a drunk driver. Car landed inside the barber shop, if you remember. We had video from the outside, we had video from the inside, and I think, you know, what struck me at that moment, the fact that they had their body cams on, that we're now providing a very nice window into what the public sees, what we're seeing firsthand. You're hearing the yelling, you're hearing the panic, you're hearing all the things that go with these type of incidents. Obviously, the officers acted heroically, but it does give a window for the public into, you know, how we do things.
Yes, because, you know, nowadays we live in a whole different atmosphere where people get their news instantaneously.
You certainly do.
As it's happening. I remember, for sure, I don't remember, but I'm sure that when you joined the police department, that was not the case.
No, I mean, it was, you know, I mean, I was on the police department probably before there were beepers. So, you know, there was just, you know, it was the newspaper at the time. It was the Herald-Statesman in Yonkers, not the Journal News, but the Herald-Statesman.
By where the motor vehicle used to be.
That's right. People will know. They've been around a little while what the Herald-Statesman was, and you know, it took time for beat reporters to go out and get incident reports that had to be handwritten, and then they had to bring it to their editor and see which ones they wanted to put up. And so, you know, instead of your process where it's instantaneous, back then the process could have lasted 3, 4, 5 days before the public heard about a particular incident. So
if they heard.
If they heard it at all, yeah.
Now, Commissioner, let's move into something else, okay? I don't know if this is true or not, and I'm asking so you can give me clarification. Information real time. Is there a war, a gang war going on in Yonkers between south of Yonkers and north of Yonkers? Because we don't hear about gangs between east of Yonkers and west. Most of the time it's south and north. Is that such a thing going on?
Right now, there is not. Obviously, there are petty disputes and things like that, but you know, if you know, you have to really narrow down and narrate and define what you mean by gang war. You're talking about shootings, or you're talking about stabbings, or you're talking about assaults, and we've had
violent crimes.
We've had very few violent crimes that are group violence driven, gang violence driven in the last 3 or 4 months. Very few. It's been relatively quiet. Obviously, we're always vigilant. We are always paying attention to what's going on. We're always talking to people out in the street, and we're trying to pay as much attention as we can, get as much information as we can. But, you know, if you look in terms of violence, the first 6 months of the year of 2021 in Yonkers was far more violent with relation to gang violence than the last 6 months. Last 6 months, knock on wood, we'll continue to pray, and hopefully God will take care of us and we won't have any violence going forward. But most of the violence in 2021 was the first 6 months of the year.
Commissioner, what about shoplifting in Yonkers? I know that you were involved in some kind of a meeting, you know, with local business people, and the topic of the agenda was shoplifting. Shop owners don't want to risk their lives because a hat was stolen.
Nor should they.
Nor should they. I know that you have the mini precinct right here in the square, and because of that precinct, the response time is much, much, much greater. How should shop owners handle? What's the response? What was that meeting about? What came out of that meeting? Give us any information.
So the first thing is, with respect to shoplifting in general, you want to use, and all the store owners, and we can help them with it if they're interested, local store owners, big box stores, we use a methodology called crime prevention through environmental design. It's called CEPTED. It's not new, and crime prevention through environmental design. If you want to think like if you have a park and the trees need to be cut back so you have the police can view the park from the street. That is an upgrade that's good for us because then there's less dark areas where people can be assaulted or sexually assaulted or robbed. And the same thing is you can put principles to like an area with more lighting that's cleaner is ordinarily a safer place. An area with less lighting, with more coverage and brush and trees from the street is usually more attractive to someone who wants to commit a robbery. So we do septet. Shoplifting can be counteracted by septet as well. You want to design your store in a way that the most desirable items are as far away from the door as possible. You want to really go through what your individual shoplifting cases are like what are they taking? They're always taking alcohol. They're always taking, baby milk and Enfamil and things like that. There are patterns that you can discover in each store about what's being stolen. It's also where it's being stolen in the store. It's also what time of day it's being stolen. So there's a lot of different metrics you could look at to give your target harden. That's what we call it. How do you septet to target harden? Now, one of the big issues that we're dealing with is obviously with bail reform, and we're working on it. But what you're seeing nationally, not just in New York, and even more prevalent, you hear these situations in California, in San Francisco, and places like that where there's like just shoplifting's out of control because there's no consequences. There was a prop, I don't know if it's Prop 47, but I believe there was a proposition that the California voters voted for to decriminalize anything under, I think, $900. So essentially in California, you go into a store and steal anything under 900 or an aggregate amount of items that rise to just under 900, and there's really no consequences. It's like a fine. And so this has really gotten people to shoplift more, which is not what anybody wants. So you have to use your precision policing model, which we use. You identify who the most prolific, persistent shoplifters are, and you go after them. And you do your best to see that they're taken into custody and they serve jail time, because that's ultimately what stops it. There's a very small subset, like I always say, of persistent criminal. Like crime will happen, but the numbers that drive crime are generally a very small group of people. So you have to deal with those people. Deal with those people, and then what that has helped for us for our community outreach, because then we're not having negative interactions with the rest of the community, the 95 or 96 or 97% of the community that deserve our respect, deserve our care, and we want to have a good relationship with them. It's this 5% that just seems to drive 80, 85, 90% of the crime.
Now, Commissioner, New York City is right next door. A new DA was elected not long ago who believes in a different way. You know what I'm going with that, right?
Sure.
Okay. Where is not going to be seeking jail time for certain crimes. Actually, there was an article yesterday or the day before on New York Post where somebody got a much lighter sentence because of his policy. His logic is, we don't need a hard sentencing because we've been trying that forever and it did not work. So we need a new system.
He's wrong.
Is this new system the way to go?
No. And he's wrong about a number of things. The first thing is that we've been trying this all along and we haven't. What we tried was mass incarceration, and that clearly didn't work. Because if you look in Yonkers, at our height in the mid-2000s, we probably did about 7,000 arrests a year. This year, crime is down 10%, 11% in violent crime, 9% in property crime, for a total of 10% reduction, and we made less than 3,000 arrests. Less than 3,000. So what does this tell me? It tells me that we don't have to arrest a lot of people. In fact, we have to arrest very few. But in every single crime category, there are top offenders that offend and reoffend and reoffend and reoffend, and they have to be taken to task until they either stop the behavior or we put them in jail. And to me, that's the holy grail of policing, is that, we're lucky. We have a prosecutor that believes in precision policing, and she follows a precision prosecution model. So, again, like, I'll give you an example, and I know I talk about this all the time, but I love talking about it. If you have people breaking into cars, and you have, say, 30 We call them larceny from autos, 30 larceny from autos a month in the 4th precinct. It's not 30 different people doing one each. It's one person doing 20 and the other doing 10 for the total of 30. So when you take care of those 2 people, there's no more larceny from autos. And I think this particular DA is short-sighted and not thinking about victims, not thinking about the trauma, not thinking about how people feel. Like in communities of color in particular, when you get your car broken into, it's a big deal financially. It can be financially disastrous. And what I'm saying is we have to put those folks who are the victim of that crime over the person who's perpetrating the crime. I wish that people would get, help with drug addiction issues and all kinds of other issues, and I wish that we wouldn't have to arrest anybody. But if we're going to take a position between the criminal and the victim, we're always going to be victim-centric. We have to be. And I think that, unfortunately, if that policy and that kind of framework continues for the year, you're going to see rising crime rates. Because now you have a mayor in Eric Adams who's a former police officer. He has a new police commissioner, and it seems like they're looking to restore some semblance of sanity, in New York City. And you can't do it without the prosecutorial aspect of it, and you can't do it without the judges. We can make all the arrests in the world, and we don't want to make many arrests, but when we do, we want to be able to go to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor wants to be able to go to the judge and say, these folks have to be held accountable. And if they're not held accountable, all that does is make people want to do it more. And when you have a feeling of no accountability, why not? If I can walk into the same store, shoplift 10 times, and nothing happens, why stop at 10? Why not do it 40 times? And is that fair to the store? Especially, listen, we don't think stealing is appropriate for anybody, but especially, think about our Southwest Yonkers small mom and pop businesses all along South Broadway, all along the Main Street. Retail theft is devastating to them. So we have to do our best to make sure that we're taking care of them.
So you're not happy with the way that the new New York City DA?
It's not a question of not happy. I don't agree with it. I think that in my professional 30-year opinion, I think it's a mistake.
Now let's talk about our Westchester County DA.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when she was running, one of her lines was that she was going to be very hard on crime.
Mm-hmm.
What I hear from people now is that she's not that hard on crime because she's now thinking about her re-election and she's looking at certain group interests. Now, for certain group of people. Are you happy with the way that she's been doing her job? Do you think that any improvement? Are you totally okay? Is she prosecuting the way that you expected those prosecutions to be?
From a perspective in Yonkers, we're very happy. We have, when we bring cases to the DA and we show the criminal history and we show the crimes and we have a relationship where we can communicate. Do we agree on everything? Of course not. I don't think you and I do. I don't think anybody does. But in general, I am happy with the way that they are prosecuting crimes in Westchester County. And I think that you could use Yonkers and the Yonkers Bureau, the DA's office here, and the Yonkers police officers, our uniform guys and girls, our plainclothes guys and girls that just do fantastic work, our crime analysts, and really come up with a way where our arrests are very minimal. Like I said, 7,000 at the height, down below 3,000, and crime is still low. So we're finding that real nice state of grace, that nice fine line where people are safe, we're keeping the community safe, but we're also working very hard to make sure they feel secure in how we're achieving their safety.
Commissioner, why is the people of Yonkers feeling otherwise? Is it because of people like me who reports on things as things are happening, there is more exposure, or is crime a little higher? Why do they feel that the crime is higher if it's not?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it is perception. The numbers are the numbers, and I know that we're going to get together probably next month with Mayor Spano to share our 2021 crime numbers, but I can tell you our crime is down. And, sometimes there's a perception of lawlessness and things like that, but, crime, we have data, we collect data, it's not corrupted data, it's what it is. And we've been, it's not me, it's the officers in uniform that you see, it's the plainclothes officers, crime analysts, the supervisors. These folks do a tremendous job. We're really, really dialed into that precision policing model and the procedural justice model.
Yes. Commissioner, as you know, we live and people ask questions. Okay? And this is a question that comes from Don Ron. How about people reporting false crimes and the police being suspicious that the crimes being reported is false, but they do nothing less, but they don't file any accusatory charges against the one filing the false report or false claim?
So the question comes down to how the penal law is constructed. And there is a crime on the books called falsely reporting an incident. But in many cases, and again, I have to look at the penal law. I haven't studied the penal law in a long time. But if you falsely report a child abuse, that can be a crime. If you falsely report a fire or a bomb threat where someone's going to get hurt, that can be a charge. And you also have to be able to prove these things. It's not always that easy. When we can, we do. If there's enough for us to build a fact pattern, the person intentionally, which is the culpable state, what they refer to. There's intentional, reckless, and criminal negligence. If the person intentionally meant to mislead the police and a crime was committed, yeah, we will charge, and we have charged. Is it often? No. If a person calls up and says, hey, the guy's blasting his radio, and the cops show up, and there was no loud radio, we don't arrest for that. But if it meets certain aspects of the penal law, the charge is falsely reporting an incident in the New York State Penal Law. You can look it up from Google. We will make an arrest if we can.
Now, Commissioner, you very often speak about quality of life. Okay. Most people in Yonkers, they're not very much into the political arena. They don't know. They don't understand. I don't understand the complexity of budgets these days in that. But I understand loud music. I understand those mufflers going all night long. I understand people disturbing my peace. Those things I do understand. And the majority of people on this side of Yonkers, on the west side of Yonkers, those are the things that affect them the most. And very often I hear, well, I called the police department. They never came. Or I called for a loud music that was playing from 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I called them at 8 o'clock. They showed up at 2 o'clock. Okay. I know that the police has many calls. You have a certain amount of personnel, and I know that calls are prioritized. Please address to the people of Yonkers so they can understand how those calls are responded to, how you prioritize, and not everything can be responded immediately. If there is a stabbing on North Broadway and somebody's blocking my driveway, you're not going to come to my driveway before you go to the stabbing or shooting. Can you please address that?
Sure. So, and this is not just in Yonkers, but it's in many police departments across the country. You have to prioritize your calls. So we receive about 160,000 calls a year from our public. Calls, we call them calls for service. And when they come in, depending on how the call is classified, they get prioritized. Priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 being the most serious, and 3 being the least serious. Now, when I say least serious, I don't mean least important, because our philosophy is that when the person is calling, no matter what it is, they're calling because they care. They're calling because they have a problem. They're hoping that we'll help solve it. So the first priority would be in-progress crimes. A robbery where a person was just robbed, where there's a chance for us to catch the suspect. A person was just assaulted. They're on the sidewalk. They're bleeding from the head. That's a priority 1. A shooting. A priority 2 might be a car accident with no injuries. Both occupants are out of the car. No one's hurt, but it's a fender bender. That's a priority 2. A priority 3 might be a loud noise complaint. What makes it more complicated is most people realize that when the loud music is playing, it's not Sunday morning at 5 a.m. The music starts when crime starts. So generally in the United States, crime starts to rise around 6 p.m. at night. And it crests around 2 a.m. And then it plummets 3, 4, 5 in the morning, and it goes back up again around 6 p.m. So you have this undulation going back and forth. The problem is that crime, property crime, violent crime, coincides with those quality of life complaints, such as loud radios. The same reason we're having gang assaults on Friday night or as robbery, where we might have more robberies on Friday night at 9 p.m. as opposed to Sunday morning at 8 a.m. is the same time people are having parties and jacking up the music and things like that. So what we're trying to do is figure out the ones that are recurring and seeing if we can't do, come later and do it in, we'll go right away if we can, but if we can't, trying to address these issues by going later, trying to talk to the person who's playing the music and getting them to understand they need to cooperate. Loud mufflers is our biggest one, and I think we did very proud of the work our Yonkers PD did. We changed our strategy with that. So we had a big problem with loud mufflers, and it was a big complaint. The first thing is that when you're listening to it out your window, you don't know where it's coming from. So if you're near the Thruway or the Sawmill over here, or the Sprain or the Bronx River, it may be there, and that's not our jurisdiction. But we do not take that in the Yonkers PD and say, well, then it's not our problem. We're never going to tell anyone it's not our problem. So what we did was we had a couple of details, and a detail means we bring a bunch of officers together with one specific idea in mind, and that was to go after loud mufflers. And we also brought in the county PD, because the Westchester County Police Department, who's a great partner of the YPD, they are responsible, their jurisdiction covers the Bronx River Parkway, so people know, and the Sawmill Parkway. We also brought in the New York State Police, whose jurisdiction is the Thruway and the Sprain Parkway. So now we have everybody, we have our local roads, and we have those roads covered. We made a lot, we wrote probably a lot, we wrote a lot of summonses. The difference we learned was with the loud mufflers, people can go to repair shops and just get a receipt. So they don't fix the problem. They come, they show the receipt to a judge, and we don't really, we weren't following up like we should have. Now when you get a loud muffler, we're requiring you to come and have our officers inspect the equipment to make sure it was fixed. We're not looking to, hit someone with a really expensive fine. We just want to stop the issue. We want to solve the problem. If the person brings the car in and they fix the equipment and it's no longer a loud muffler, to us that's fine. You can have a greatly reduced fine or maybe no fine at all. No harm, no foul. Let's just solve that, because what people look, we understand car enthusiasts like the loud mufflers. I think car enthusiasts are a great group of people, and they're, it's a holistic activity. But you got to think about the impact it has on the people that are listening to this all night. And so that was a good way. We'll be doing it again this spring and then this summer as things warm up. So we just hope that people would understand that a lot of times we do things like loud radios or loud mufflers. It's not us trying to harass anybody. It's us responding to someone who's concerned about this behavior. We're trying to find a way to solve the problem.
Now, Commissioner, this one comes from Lara Henshaw. I would like to know what is considered an assault. Twice I was told that if no one went to the hospital, it's not an assault.
So, is it Lara?
Lara.
Lara. So, an assault comes down, it's the penal law, New York State penal law. It's actually, I can remember the code is 120 if you want to look it up. There's different levels of assault. There's felony assault, which would be assault first degree and second degree, and there's also misdemeanor assault, which is third degree. And depending on a combination of things, do you have a serious physical injury? A serious physical injury is what it sounds like. Someone loses an eye, someone breaks an arm, someone, has a lung collapsed because they were stabbed. That's a serious physical injury. A physical injury is a black eye, a bloody nose, a sprained shoulder, or something like that. Then you have to break down, was it used with a weapon or not? If it's used, if I used a baseball bat to give you a black eye, that's a felony assault. If I punched you with a fist and you got a black eye, that's a misdemeanor assault. And then there are lower levels, which is probably, it has nothing to do with the hospital or not. It has to do with the severity of the injury. Usually if you have a serious physical injury, you're going to go to the hospital, but not in all cases. Then there's also the harassment levels, which is below. That's 240 in the penal law. And the harassment levels is a slap with no physical injury. So if someone slaps you in the face, they slapped you, but you don't have a physical injury. You have nothing to show that you were slapped. That's harassment. So there's different levels, and it depends on the severity of the injury, what the intent was, and whether or not you used a deadly weapon or a dangerous instrument. And a dangerous instrument would be anything. If I stab you with a pen, that's considered a dangerous instrument. So I hope that answers the question.
Ethan Vasquez asks, Ethan Vasquez, how are the police department looking to address the increase in crime, particularly among the young people and gang involvement?
So we're working really hard with our community partners, Ethan. We're talking, we work with the YMCA, the YWCA. We work with the Nepperhan Community Center. And we work with a lot of different groups. It's not an easy thing, especially with youth crime, because, I think as an adult, and, I'm a father of 3 boys, the oldest 22, your brain really doesn't develop for males until you're like 25 years old. So these kids are spontaneous, these kids are compulsive, and it's a bad mix if you have guns and there's violence in the community. So we work with with different not-for-profits, different community-based organizations. We try to identify the kids that are the most violent, even at 10, 11, 12 years old, and see if we can't get them services. I know we've talked in the past about our Mom Summit.
Yes,
We'll identify the kids that we see in these incidents. Maybe they weren't directly involved, but they were at the scene of a shooting at 3 in the morning, which no 12-year-old child should be. And now we'll find out who the child is. We'll bring in mom, but in addition to that, we'll bring in the Board of Education to talk about the child's school history. We'll bring in the Department of Social Services to see what the family needs, what kind of resources. Do they have rent insecurity? Is there mental illness issues there that need to be treated? And then the Westchester County Department of Social Services has been fantastic in helping us get caseworkers for the entire family. So hopefully, again, we haven't seen the success yet because they're still young, but maybe 5 years from now, based on this strategy, Ethan, we've been able to head off some of the ones that would have ended up getting involved in gangs and going to federal prison, and that's not something anybody wants. And the Board of Education is fantastic. Superintendent Edwin Quezada is a fantastic partner. He brings staff. He comes himself personally when we sit down with these different families, and it really does help a lot. I mean, again, we don't see the success yet, and sometimes we'll invite 15 different families and we'll only get 2. But to me, if we invite 15, we only get 2, and we succeed with 1, that's good enough for now. We just keep on building on that.
Now, Commissioner, a few years ago, I personally took advantage of the Citizens Police Academy.
Mm-hmm.
That helped me tremendously changing the perspective, okay, in regards to the Yonkers Police Department. My perspective was not good, I have to be honest. Okay.
But it's gotten better.
Much better. Almost 380 degree. We're not there, but as you said, as long as we move in the needle in the right direction.
Where are we trending?
Exactly, it's good. Lots of people want to take advantage of that program. And I think they should, because there is a lot to learn and you can see things from a different lens. But people from the south of Yonkers, Lawrence Street, Elliott, and other areas here in the north, on the northwest side, will have a problem getting to the first precinct. Transportation, the bus stops at Staple, then they have to walk, I think, a mile or 2 to get to the precinct, then coming back, it's another hassle. People need to have something like that on this side of Yonkers, so they can understand better. And this is something that actually Hector Santiago brought up and said, listen, you should ask the commissioner.
Hector and I talked about this, and it was right, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong. Hector's a great community partner. We talked about this right at the advent of the pandemic. So everything kind of fell apart. I hate keep having to rotate back to that and saying, oh, we didn't do this or that because of COVID, but we didn't. Couldn't be in close quarters. But the Citizen Police Academy in Yonkers is one of my favorite community outreach programs because, as Rue says, it helps us bring people into our world and share with them how we do things. And listen, it's a two-way street. We get perspective from the community that go through the process.
We need that reach.
And so it teaches, handcuffing, why we arrest, how we arrest, what a taser does, what the firearms
and how does it feel?
How does it feel? Did you do the FATS machine?
No.
Where they shoot, don't shoot, there's a
Oh,
screen.
yes,
All right,
I
do you
did.
want to quick tell them that? Because people seem to find that the most. What was your experience?
Well,
tell them what it is first.
you have a scenario where you see the perpetrator or in different scenarios, and
Big TV screen, and you have a gun with you.
You have a gun with you.
A fake gun.
A fake gun, of course. I asked for a real gun. They said no. Okay, so I had a fake gun, and you see the scenario, and in a matter of seconds, you have to make a judgment and a determination who is the real perpetrator, or who is probably an innocent person that just came from behind the door. And very often, you shoot the wrong person. And then you kind of get to understand sometimes why things do happen, because it's a matter of seconds, less than of a second, that you have to make that determination. Is it a threat? Is it the real threat or not?
Yes, and that's part of the training. So it's a long training in terms of days and weeks, but it's a couple hours, I think, for each night, and I think it's great outreach. To Hector's point, yes, we have to do it either figure out a way to do it here and find a space here, which we could do it maybe at the library or the PAL, or we have to be able to get a bus and get folks that don't have the ability to drive to the first, get them a ride to the first, and that would be great. It's the best outreach there is, and we have a very, very active Citizen Police Academy Alumni Association, the CPAAA, where they have 30 or 40 folks that are very involved in this. They went through it. They didn't want the relationship to end. They go to a national night out. You'll see them at different fundraisers and things like that, and they're just really good about spreading the message. But we do plan, as long as everything gets better in terms of the virus, of having another Citizen Police Academy, and we can only take so many people, and when the people do come, we really want people to commit and say, don't show up for a day, or don't show up for 3 classes out of 12. We need you to make a commitment, because we want you to get the best experience you can get.
Now, Ethan Vasquez brings up another good point, and I kind of agree with him on this. And I agree because I speak with people on the street about crime, about job or jobless, and one of the things they say causes crime is lack of jobs. Has the police department thought about probably work with business owners in regards to train people of the community to give them jobs so they can work and stay away from crime?
We don't do that directly, but we obviously work with a lot of different not-for-profits and community organizations that do that. The work that we do to, in terms of crime prevention, which is what Ethan is referring to, is things like the PAL. PAL's been closed for 2 years because of COVID. Very excited about where we're going with PAL this year. We have a new PAL director, Marisol Mancebo, who is absolutely a fantastic woman. She has a background, she has an experience at the YMCA, and the work she's done there already, along with the board, has really been fantastic. I am extremely excited about where the PAL is going to go. We're going to take it to the next level as far as programs, and we want to get the community involved. So if there's someone who has a passion like chess, and they want to set up a chess instructional thing, obviously we're going to vet everybody to come in, because we're dealing with children. We're going to do background checks and things like that. But we also want not just paid program, but we want volunteers from the community that have an interest or a specific passion that they think that they could pass on to the kids in our community. Maybe cooking, I don't know. We have a kitchen there, so there's a lot of different ideas we can do, but the key is we need willing volunteers. We have a great baseball program there, a great boxing program, but we also want to do more. Soccer. We want to get girls, start thinking about girls' activities too. And we also want to go, and it's not there yet, but it's in the early stages, we want to go not just athletics. People think the Police Athletic League, athletic being the word, we want to see if we can't, one of the thoughts is, and we have some famous Yonkers, musicians that are interested in helping us, is creating a music studio where kids can go there and record, possibly some podcast booths for kids to just do things like that. Because we don't want to just do sports, because we know that not every kid likes sports. Some kids are into art, some kids are into music, and we don't want to take away those opportunities. We want to make it a place where everybody wants to go. So we got a lot of good plans, and thank God Marisol is our director, because she's going to take us where we need to go.
Well, I spoke with Marisol about 2 weeks ago I know Marisol for the last 35 years, personally. Great person. And yes, you're right. Her intention is to take this to a second level. And she's working a very tight connection with the Yonkers Police Department. And the plans are great. But like we always say, actions, not words.
I have faith in her. She's going to make it happen.
Stay tuned, guys. Options are there if you need a place to bring your child to. Check the PAL.
And if you have something you want to volunteer with, if you have a specific interest or passion, anything, let us know, because maybe we can build out a program and get kids that are in the community that are interested in it and give them some, something.
I have to give a shout out to Lieutenant Patrick McCormick.
Pat McCormick, yep, he's our detective captain.
Detective captain. I'm sorry, Captain.
It's okay.
Okay, for his program. Captain McCormick has a program, hockey. Fantastic program. And I hear that lots of police officers will be involved with the PAL, coaching other future activities.
They are, and just to share what Captain McCormick does, Pat McCormick has a background in hockey. He loves hockey, and we have a number of officers that are great hockey players that are interested. I know Officer, now Lieutenant Madison, I believe P.O. Strauss, I think Officer Gonzalez, Max Gonzalez. There's a number of officers that are hockey players, and they've been willing to give their own time and share their experience with hockey with kids that never played before. And I visited last year. So what they do is they go to Murray skating rink and they just take the kids out and they do drills. Some of the kids have never been on skates. Some of the kids have never held a hockey stick. So the idea of us exposing them to that, and maybe it's another interest that they had, is what this is all about. And in the meantime, they're making connections with police officers in a non-enforcement environment. They're on the ice, they're playing hockey. One kid wants to learn how to play hockey. These guys have played hockey their whole life, and that's the key, is that now you're bridging these two things and bringing it together. This is how relationships are made. And the thing that I like the most about this hockey program, if you look at it, I gotta say, I think like half of them are girls that are playing. And so that's another thing, it's not something you think like girls play a lot of hockey, but who knows, maybe we'll have some college level, collegiate level hockey players at some point.
And Commissioner, that's how you change mindsets, okay? Because lots of the bad opinions about the police department are really not based on personal experiences, are based on somebody else's experience, that maybe something that happened 20, 30 years ago when police departments were totally different. Okay? Now we're making a different connection. Positive programs like that, where the kids are engaged with the police officers that are now coaching, so the mindset will change. Probably we will collect those fruits a few years from now, but better now than never.
I can't, be prouder of my officers. Like I know that Officer Roxanne Mariano started her own not-for-profit with another group of officers, and they do soccer, and I think they do baseball. We had a lacrosse program, trying to share, the sport of lacrosse. 3 of my kids play lacrosse, 2 of them play in college, and sharing that with kids in Yonkers about playing lacrosse. These officers that we have now are fantastic, and they will share their passions and their interests with kids, and they're doing this on their own time, and come out, like the same thing I said with the officers, supervisors that go in the hockey program. They're not being paid for that. They want to make this connection, and they want to share the joy that they've had in playing hockey. So whether it's lacrosse or hockey or soccer, these are great ways to build bridges.
Commissioner, let's talk about Gary Square for a little bit. You walk in Gary Square, and some people are afraid. Okay? They see people overdosed in corners. Some die.
Yes.
Some die. What is being done about Gary Square, about the homeless situation? I know that being homeless is not criminal, okay, but it's a problem.
Well, what we say,
drugs.
What we say is we never want to. We're not trying to criminalize homelessness, but we're not for bad behavior. So if you're going to aggressively panhandling people that are just trying to walk back and forth from their building, that's a problem. If you're making it uncomfortable, if you're urinating in the street, we can't have that. These are not things that are healthy for anybody in any society. The Project Connect is a group that we've reached out to, and we've been working with the mayor in conjunction with Mayor Spano. They came here, and there is a now 100 North Broadway. It's a drop-in shelter. What we think is going to help a little bit more this time is when you look at people that are homeless for years, it's almost as hard for them to come inside as it would be for one of us to go sleep outside for the night. This is what they've done. They're institutional. That's where they feel safe. A lot of times it includes mental illness. It includes drug addiction. So it's not just people don't want to be homeless. What we like about Project Connect is they work directly with our officers, and we start with just a conversation with the outreach workers. And sometimes the police are with them, sometimes they're not. And just say, will you come for a cup of coffee to 100 North Broadway? A cup of coffee might lead to a meal. A meal might lead to a shower. A shower might lead to a medical exam. A shower and a medical exam might lead to temporary housing. And we think that if we stick to the most chronically homeless people, the people that really live outside all the time, and work this angle, that maybe we'll be able to alleviate some of the homelessness in the square. In the meantime, we're not going to tolerate bad behavior. We're not going to allow anyone to make anyone else feel uncomfortable through aggressive panhandling, people following people down the street trying to get, borrow money or ask for money. We're not going to accept that. But we'll give people as many opportunities as we can, and expect that they're going to behave appropriately.
A few months ago, somebody called me because they had an issue that they wanted to create awareness, mental illness. Somewhere on North Broadway, a gentleman was putting a wood board out of his porch, laying down on the wood board, like he's catching some suntan. You know about that case?
I don't.
Okay.
But I'm sure that
The
we have lots of them.
Okay. The residents very concerned because he could lose balance, drop down, kill himself or somebody else who might be walking down. Police responded, took him to the hospital. Within 45 minutes, he was back in his home.
Yeah.
People were upset. I tried to explain that police cannot make medical decisions. Yes, you respond as often as you have to respond. You bring it to a medical center. The doctors make that determination if the person needs to be kept there or not. And if the doctors say no, then they go back out. Is my assessment correct, sir?
It's correct, and I'll even expound on your assessment. The assessment that I have is that the system as it is now, just taking people to the hospital, doesn't work. We see it all the time. Like the go-to answer is put someone in an ambulance and take them to the emergency room. They're evaluated, as you say, in 48 minutes, and they're right back where they are. Emergency rooms are not built for that kind of thing. They've taken away institutions for people that really need more care. And a lot of times people that are prescribed medication that might help them navigate life a little better don't take the medication. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and it's a free country, and people want to live the way they want to live. But it's a real problem, and we see it now. And I think one of the things that came up with police reform was, we're the catch-all. So that if there's a problem in the middle of the night, Christmas Eve, and someone has a mental episode, there's no psychiatrist just to dispatch there. The police go there. Police reform all over the country, a lot of people felt like, we shouldn't have the police responding to this. And I couldn't agree more. We don't feel like we're equipped, and we would never be equipped to the comprehensive problems of mental illness. And we would like to have, either a social worker respond or a psychiatrist. The problem is, I think, in a lot of the proponents of this, they didn't have a plan to take the police out of it. So it's like, okay, don't have the police respond. Well, what are you going to do now? Okay, well, we have 2 caseworkers for Yonkers. Well, what if there's 18 people in crisis at once? You so 2 places. It's not as simple as it is. What happens if someone calls in sick? One caseworker calls in sick and there's no one there for Sunday. What happens if it's a holiday and no one comes in? The only 3 groups that are here 24/7 are the Empress Ambulance, the Yonkers Fire Department, the Yonkers Police Department. Call anytime, in the middle of a tornado, in the middle of Christmas Day, or any other time, and we're going to respond. And until mental health services gets up to the point where they're operational, where they can actually effectively dispatch people, other than police officers, to try to mitigate these problems, we're going to be the, we're going to be the ones called. We're trying to be better with it. We're learning about mental health. We're learning about mental illness. The county has recently instituted, which we're part of slowly, the 911 diversion program, where our dispatchers can triage mental illness calls and try to, get better information, because now they're properly trained about what we're looking for. We want to make sure, like for example, autism. Different kids that are on the spectrum of autism have different things that will trigger them. It's good to know that information before the police officers respond on scene, so they can act appropriately. Maybe the kid who's autistic and is on the spectrum acts out if he sees you walk into his bedroom. If the cops don't know that, it can really be a bad situation. If the cops know in advance, they ask mom to have the kid come out, then things go a little smoother. So we're looking for every possible piece of information when we go on a call, because it's not the officer's fault if they don't know what they're dealing with. We do as much training as we can, but it's always still really hard, because mental illness is, let's face it, you become, to be a psychiatrist, you have to be a doctor. We're not doctors. We're not therapists. We're not social workers. We do the best we can. They do the best they can. We try to do that kind of training until we get a professional to come, but it's hard.
But sometimes people expect the police department or police officers to be everything.
They want us to be all things to all people, and I think the one thing we've learned in the last couple of years is that's really hard to do, and do every single thing well. If you wanted to just say respond to medical calls, I think we do much better at medical calls. But if we're going to respond every possible situation you can imagine and expect, you're not going to get a psychiatrist's level of expertise from every officer when it comes to a person in mental health crisis.
Now, Commissioner, believe it or not, more than an hour and a half, more or less, has passed by.
I hope people didn't get bored.
No, they're here. They're talking. So we have to conclude sooner or later, but I don't want to conclude without bringing this up. This series of robberies involving Amazon truck happened in the Bronx and Yonkers. The FBI released a photo. It's not that clear, but as soon as I have a better picture, we will publish it. Let me stick it around there for a few seconds so you guys can see it. Okay, we will say.
So the background to this for the public is we're looking to identify this individual. So what was happening was before Christmas and I think a little after Christmas, there was a group of individuals arrested. Two. He is the third person we're still looking for. Would follow an Amazon truck, and then when the Amazon delivery person parked, they would essentially hijack the truck, stick him up at gunpoint, tie him up, drive to another location, unload all the boxes out of the Amazon truck, and then untie the guy and let him walk, take him to a place where it took time to go get a phone or something. We apprehended 2 out of 3. The Southern District, these people are going to be federally charged, which is good, and we're looking for one more person. So if there's anybody who has any information on this person, who it is, where we might find him, so we can speak with him, that would be great.
If you have any information about this crime or any other crime, call the Yonkers Police Department. Don't call Yonkers Voice. Call the Yonkers Police Department. And I'm saying that, Commissioner, not to be funny, but people sometimes they send us email about this crime or that crime, and I always say, look, things involving crime, you should call the local police department first.
Yeah, and we have a 411 tips line, which is easy to give your information. It can be anonymous if you like, I believe. And with and I know this will be for a topic for another get together, but we want to talk about our Motorola project. We're getting a lot of new software and hardware and great technology that we think is going to be great. One of the biggest reasons is because of the public-facing platform that we'll be able to push out everything that's happening, what's going on and where and why, and we think this is going to be another great way for us to connect with our community.
On that note, sir, we conclude today's interview. Unless you have anything maybe that you want to address, I forgot to ask because
I think we'll have many more times. I enjoyed this, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk.
No, thank you for making yourself available, and we will see each other in about maybe a month or less.
Yes, sir.
Okay, to talk about the crime statistics.
Yeah, and the mayor will be there.
And the mayor will be there.
A lot of what we see now is because of the work of the mayor. You know, the mayor giving us the tools we need. The mayor buying into our crime strategies and things like that. You don't do that unless you have, you know, the head of the city, you know, endorsing what you're doing.
So we're glad that the Yonkers Mayor, Mike Spano, and Yonkers Police Commissioner, Mr. John Mueller, are taking advantage of the new way, the social platforms, because that's where the people are. If you want to connect, if you want that bridge between here and there, you have to go where the people are. And Yonkers Voice is the place.
Thank you, sir.
Actions, not words. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.